myself again. But it's the only...
Good evening and welcome to NUFC Matters with me, Steve Wraith, and it is Retro Night. So I'm joined by George Mitchell, by Steve Wilkinson, Stu Penman, Steve Hasty and Neil Mitchell. Good evening, lads.
Evening, everyone.
Good to have you all with us, and tonight we are looking at Liverpool, Newcastle United's matches against Liverpool throughout the ages, home and away. And as we were just talking off air there, like I was saying, it's the 4 and 5-0 hammerings that make the odd victory probably all that more special. And looking forward to hearing your stories tonight. And I just want to start by showing this photograph, and this is the first memory that I actually have of Newcastle Liverpool, and this is sent in by Mark Byers, who is a regular viewer of the show, and he, like me, was sitting at home watching the very first televised match of the day in 1983-84 season when Newcastle drew Liverpool, and there we go, there's Mark sitting watching it. He's got his TV all decked out there, but I remember exactly that situation, and fantastic memories. Not so good result, but there we go. That's just typical of Newcastle against Liverpool, especially at Anfield, and of course the game where Kevin Keegan decided that he was going to call it a day as a professional football. I'm sure the lads might be touching on that through the show, so we'll start with George. Good evening, George. What's your first memories of Newcastle against Liverpool?
Well, the first memory for me is Superback's debut match when he first joined. I mean, we'd been told by Harvey and anybody else at Newcastle United you want to listen to that this centre forward was coming, and we'd seen foretastes of what he was capable of at Luton on TV, but that wasn't in the first division. That was elsewhere. So there was a little tint of concern about would he make it in the big league, and lo and behold, what did he do? He didn't just make it; he shattered them from the first. I think it was about the second minute. By the second minute, he'd already had two shots one skimming the crossbar, one skimming the one of the posts, and then he just went on to tear them to bits. Now, I think most of you have heard me say when we get a new player, I like to look and see what is it about them that people see that makes them a player. Well, Supermac had everything. He had pace, strength. He could head like a bullet if he needed to. And the only thing left for me was, could he stand up to the sort of rough and tumble that sometimes get in the first division? And of course, who was he playing? Who was on the opposite side? The Anfield Iron, Tommy Smith was there, reputedly the hardest tackler in the league, and Supermac just ran through him. I mean, there was never any doubt that Supermac was going to be a star for us. So to score a hat-trick on your debut and against Liverpool, just a dream come true. And the one or two personal things about that is again, that people on the field who I actually knew, was quite a few in the Newcastle team, but there was one in the Liverpool team, Peter Thompson, who was long-time left winger for Liverpool and England. Now, Peter Thompson played for Cumberland Boys in the years I played for the Northumberland Boys, and we opposed each other a couple of times. And lo and behold, when I turned up with the crowd from the northeast to go to Burnley with Charlie Ferguson, Peter Thompson was already there with the scout from the west side of the country. So we got to know each other quite well. So seeing him actually playing against the Magpies was quite nice and quite touching. McDonald's 3 goals, of course, were the outstanding thing, but there were other things for me. I thought that was one of the best games that Ollie Burton had for Newcastle United. Again, Ollie's somebody I knew personally very well indeed. And I thought that was an outstanding. His game that day was absolutely outstanding for a Newcastle defender. And then, of course, all the backups were there. Tudor, young Dyson, Tommy Gibb, who I always thought was an underrated player by the media and by our fans sometimes. I thought Tommy was better than many people give him credit for. And, of course, you had Bob Moncur playing as well. And substitute was Tommy Cassidy. So it was a great day with lots of great players that made their name with Newcastle United. But as I say, the highlight was to see Malcolm McDonald just run through several times. He got 3 goals. He could have had 4 or 5 with a little bit of luck. And he, as I say, he just ran through all these hard men who were supposed to be the best tacklers in the league. And I think cemented for me, and I suspect the rest of the fans, that here we had a player who was going to do things for us, and we've never been disappointed. The other plus is, of course, he took to it, didn't he? He's nearly as much a Geordie as you and I are. He loves the place so much, and if you hear him talk about his time at Newcastle, and he couldn't pay a bigger compliment than settling here, and that again just is the measure of the man. You know, that tells you something about the person. To get players coming in now for lots of money, and they can't even speak English, and they can't be bothered to speak English. Supermac bought into it and has stayed with it. So that match has a particularly promising memories for me. 40,000 crown, which wasn't great, but at the time was reasonable for us. So that's my first memory, Steve.
Great stuff. Steve Wilkinson, over to you, mate.
Right. I've only been down to Liverpool a couple of times to see and actually saw a win. And it's the first game I'm going to talk about, April 1994. First season back in the First Division, as it was then. Premier League, actually. It wasn't called the Premier League then, wasn't it?
It was Premier League.
We'd beaten them earlier in the season at home, and a game I'm not telling you anything about in case anybody's picked that game, because that was memorable for another reason. And we played them away and won 2-0, which was fantastic to actually see them beat Liverpool down there. Rob Lee put ahead in the first couple of minutes, and we actually bombarded them right through the first half. Andy Cole had a stormer. He could have had a hat-trick that day, and soon after half-time he got a second goal about 50-odd minutes, and fantastic goal. That was a breakaway goal from our defence, actually. I think was it Pavel in goal? I think possibly, if I remember.
Yes.
Pavel might have been in goal, and it broke away down the right hand side. Rule Fox eventually, one of what you always call a slide rule pass, right into his path, and he just knocked it past the keeper 2-0. And a fantastic day to actually win down Anfield. You can imagine the joy of actually beating them down there. It was unbelievable. And obviously that was the first season up. We finished third. Andy Cole scored a hat full of goals, and we shouldn't have sold him. So that's a brief one for me, but it was, you kind of beat winning away, you know, any game, as you all know, and to win down there, as we talked at the beginning, there's a hell of a lot of defeats, but so to actually see us beat them down there was fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, Paul Oxley mentions his first Newcastle-Liverpool game was the same one that I went to, and that was Kevin Keegan's testimonial game, which was dubbed Auf Wiedersehen Kev. My dad took me, I was a 7-year-old, and all I can remember was Keegan leaving in a helicopter. I've been a fan ever since, and I was lucky enough to get the guys back together last year at an event, the Fantastic Four. I had Kevin Beardsley, Terry Mack, and Chris Waddle back together on the top table up at the Lancastrian suite. And great story from Peter Beardsley that night, where he actually was told by Kevin that he was going to give him his shirt after the game. And
it's gone.
He needs to put 50p in the meter, doesn't he?
Right. Took my shirt
Kevin,
and ran.
Yeah. Basically what happened there was Peter Beardsley was obviously standing next to the helicopter expecting to get the shirt, and Kevin handed it to a police officer to pass on to Peter Beardsley. All these years later, Peter Beardsley is still waiting to get that shirt. So one day that police officer might own up that he's actually handed the he's got a hold of that shirt. Interesting story that. But yeah, Stu, over to you for your first Liverpool memory, and hopefully Virgin Media don't drop us again there like they did.
You must be the only virgin in Felon, Steve.
Anyway, first experience in Liverpool was, I think it was either 81 or 82, when it wasn't even a game. It was when the families used to go to Pontons or Butlands and stuff like that. Well, we were a Pontons family, and we went to Southport. And for a day trip, we went to Anfield and to get a tour of the ground and the trophy room and everything else. And we're sitting in the car park eating fish and chips before the tour started. And Sammy Lee walked over. We got a few players' autographs, like one of the Kennedys and Phil Neal, etc. And Sammy Lee come over and started eating the fish and chips. Sat down against the wall when we started eating the fish and chips. I just thought I'd throw that one in. The first memory was the picture that you just showed there, the BBC, the 4-0 game, the cup game. But what I remember from it, apart from Newcastle getting battered, was the atmosphere, the noise Newcastle fans made throughout. And that was the season I went to my very first game, which was one of the Man City games, where Man City at home and we beat them 5-0. And that from there, you just hooked and hooked for life, unfortunately. But the first game, Liverpool game I went to at St. James's, was also a televised game. And we got beat 4-1, and Stevie Nicol, who had the infamy of having the biggest feet in the Football League or something, as a defender, he scored a hat-trick against us in a 4-1 victory for Liverpool. And I remember just watching I was in the Gallagher, just watching it empty long before it finished. You know, we're masochists, I suppose, as Newcastle fans. We go there with all the optimism of me saying 3-1 every week. And you just know it's not going to happen, but you still expect it to. So when it does, there was something I put on Twitter before, you know, for all the bad experiences, you just get that one good one, and it makes it so different, so special. And that's what makes our fan base as good as, if not better than anyone else's. But the first memory of a match was the 4-1 game when we got beat at home. There's other games to speak about, I'm sure, and so I'll pass you on to Mr. Lee.
Yeah, I remember that Steve Nicol game. For all the wrong reasons as well. I was at that game, but that was my first baptism of fire in a proper league game as well with Liverpool at home, and one which you wanted to forget. Steve Hasty, your first Liverpool memory?
I was just going to say, I think this is going to carry on in the same vein, isn't it? With we're going to continuously say about defeats. So I've managed to remember a victory. Ironically, the first time we played them at home after the cup final in '74, 1975 it was, February, and we absolutely ripped them apart. Typical Newcastle, played absolutely rubbish just 6 months earlier in the cup final. And then they turn up at St James's Park and absolutely thumped them. Same team, 4-1, I think it was. It was a Wednesday night. McDonald was just on fire. In the way that he wasn't on fire in the cup final, he was actually on fire that night. Scored 2. Barraclough scored 1. John Tudor scored another. 4-0 up. I think the consolation was Brian Hall. But that was still virtually the same Liverpool team, you know. And that was just typical Newcastle. And if my memory serves me right, that at that particular time, the trophy count was 11 to Newcastle, 10 to Liverpool. That's what we were like. That's what people forget. What sort of a club we are, what sort of club we were in terms of winning trophies. And, you know, we were 11 to 10 on Liverpool. I think we're still sitting on 11. They're up in nearly treble figures, probably the way things have gone. But that particular one in '75, I mean, there's been some great games. Stewie mentioned that game before, and I remember the Steve Nicol one. But we'll probably come to some of the other ones that I've enjoyed. But that was my first memory that hasn't of a game that hasn't already been mentioned so far, because obviously the first one was 71, as George said, with Supermac in his home debut.
Yeah, okay, good stuff, Steve. Neil, over to you for your first memory.
Do you know what it is with what Steve just said there about trophies? You know, and then we had all this song and dance about them winning the league after 30 years of hurt. And in that time, they'd played in 2 competitions we've never even qualified for. You know, it just absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely, you know. And it's the way that they've gone on this season. I've actually lost a little bit of time for them this season.
Mhm.
The crying and moaning over Van Dijk and Klopp having to go to the Klopp having to go to the media about the time of the kickoff. I'm sorry, we get sent to Portsmouth at like 10 o'clock at night, and nobody would say nothing if they did that, and he's whinging about having to use his squad. It's ridiculous. Anyway, that I wasn't going to talk about my first movie. I was going to actually talk about the game that Steve mentioned. That's why I was going to jump in a little bit there, because it was just to flesh it out a little bit for anybody who's never seen it. That was a hell of an away day. I went down there with my mate Paul Fletcher, but actually bumped into my dad's cousin in the stand, as you do when you go on away games. You bump into people here, there, and everywhere, though he wasn't particularly oily that day. And the thing that I remember about that game is I think that was Scott Sellers' best game in a black and white shirt, and he doesn't get talked about. Everybody talks about Robert Lee's goal. Everybody talks about Andy Cole's goal. But if you look at the highlights of that game, Sellers was up against Rob Jones, so it was, if he wasn't England's right back, he was being touted as England's right back at the time, and he turned Rob Jones inside out. If you look at the highlights of the game, every highlighted moment, including the 2 goals, was started by or involved Scott Sellers. And it was the lad just had a blinding game. Bracewell, I seem to remember, running the midfield, and we really looked under doubt. And I think I've been to Anfield quite a few times since then and never felt the same. From the first goal going in, we were never in doubt. It was one of those feelings as, no, we've got this. We've got this. And Sellers was blinding. Sellers just had an absolute worldie of a day, And so that was the first game I was going to talk about, because I think we sometimes have unsung heroes in a team that don't get the credit they deserve. And that was, for me, that was Scott Sellers' day.
Yeah, mine is, and I don't usually chip in, lads, because you've got so much to say, but my greatest day was, of course, in April 1988. I think I've mentioned it on the show before, and the heroes that should have had a statue built outside the ground were, in goal, Gary Kelly, back 4 of Neil MacDonald, Brian Tinian, David McCreary, John Anderson, and Glenn Roeder. We had Mirandina, Gaza, Paul Goddard, Michael O'Neill and Kenny Wharton all playing. And we even had a substitute appearance by another Geordie lad, Paul Stevenson. And those lads were heroes because they beat Liverpool at Wembley in 1988 in the Mercantile Credit Classic. And I was there. And there we go, Mirandina celebrating. Neil MacDonald got the penalty, and I've still got the audio cassette, lads, in the loft with Charles Harrison doing the commentary, which my dad did while I was down at Wembley that weekend. But never been a statue built for them, but there should have been. That was a win at Wembley, 1-0 against Liverpool. And that Liverpool team, by the way, that day, fair enough, they had Hooper in goal, but they had Gillespie, Ablett, Nicol, Watson, Aldridge, John Barnes, Peter Beardsley, Steve McMahon, Staunton, Dernan, they're all in the squad, so wasn't bad. So there was 2,300 lucky Geordies got tickets for that wonderful weekend. The least said about the rest of the weekend, the better. And the following result that Newcastle had in the quarter-final against Tranmere Rovers, of course, you know what's coming. They got beat 2-0 off Tranmere, who at the time were fourth division, by the way, as well. So happy memories. But yeah, I've still actually got the Wembley flag as well from that day, the old Wembley, proper Wembley. George, back to you, mate, with your next recollection.
Well, people have talked about the first memory of Liverpool, and that's where I'm going now. My first memory, the Malcolm MacDonald one was probably the best memory, but never mind. My first memory goes back to April 1950. And I was with the usual crowd. By this time, my dad was home from the RAF, so his dad, grandfather, Uncle Tom was there, and one or two others. And there were, I think I've said to you, the lads always like to talk about the football, not just Newcastle United football, and what kept impressing on me who I should be watching in the Liverpool side. And the two that come out, of course, were a Scotsman called Billy Little, who played for Scotland goodness knows how many times, and was an outstanding left winger, a very dangerous player. And of course, there was the return of a former Newcastle United centre forward called Albert Stubbins, who was from Wallsend. And because my lot actually knew Albert Stubbins, as did Marjorie's father and others. So that was my pointer from who I was with, was watch them as well as watching Newcastle. Because Newcastle fielded what was nearly the team in the 50s that played in the cup final, because it was Simpson, Cowell, Harvey, Brennan, Houghton was in, but he went later on. Charlie Crowe came in, Walker, Taylor, Milburn, Hannah and Mitchell. And the score was 5-1 to Newcastle. And the outstanding player was Bobby Mitchell. He tore Liverpool to shreds. He scored 2 goals and made the other 3. He was just unplayable that day, as he could be as a dribbler, and had a great shot, had a good sense of where the goal was, even though he was a fancy player. He never hesitated to have a go when he had the opportunity, and he just tore Liverpool apart. Over 50,000 there, and I think that was as much to do with the fact that Stubbins was there and others. But I think also in those days, it may well be, and I can't remember exactly, it may well be that if you went to that match, you got a token to say that you were in the queue for a cup ticket. And I think that's maybe why there was 50,000 there. But it was a brilliant match, and I want to not forget. And as I said, when I went the first time, I cheered every goal I've seen. Well, by the time I went to this one, I was only cheering the Newcastle goals.
Great stuff, George. Steve, on to your next story, mate, about Newcastle versus Liverpool.
Well, I'm going to talk about the other time I was at Liverpool, a defeat, sadly, this time, but a memorable one because it was a very interesting game. We all remember the 2-4-3s, and the year after that, we played them down there. This time, Ruud Gullit was manager, and we were in a better position in this game than we had been in the 2-4-3s, because at one stage we led 2-0. And if the first half, Nobby Solano scored a shot from just outside the box, put us ahead. And at the same time as that goal went in, there was a bit of I'm not exactly sure what happened. I think a bit off the ball incident. And Didi Hamann, who was playing in the midfield for us, got a second yellow card and got sent off. So we were playing the rest of the game with 10 men, and Liverpool sort of took advantage of that and started putting a lot of pressure on. But Shea gave another stormer. Got into the second half, and just after half time, Duncan Ferguson, who had been centre half, got taken off. Andreas Andersson, who you might remember him, he was the Joe Linton of the day, wasn't he? He came on, and I was behind the goal where Newcastle fans were that day. And if anybody else was there, you might remember this, that the goal, but I think he was a bit of a skirmish, and Anderson got the ball through, and he was 1-on-1 with the keeper. And you just sensed he was going to cock it up, and he went round the goal. He still felt he was going to cock it up. And then he did a kind of reverse shot that went across the goal, and it was heading in. Defender on the line missed it, and I think it went bounced up and went in. So there we are, 2-0 up. Probably at that stage against the run of play. And but you sort of think, right, can we hang on? And they continue to bombard the goal, and sadly it started to go wrong, although it was still the last 20-25 minutes before our favourite centre forward started scoring goals. He got a couple. Karl-Heinz Riedler got a couple, and we finished losing 4-2. But it was another memorable game, a bit like those 2-4-3s, although a little bit imbalanced on the fact that if we had a decent defence, that wasn't the norm for those days. Having a decent defence and 11 men, we might have been able to hang on for another victory. But once they get started down there, they're lethal. You probably know that, and the goals can fly in.
Yeah,
So
lots of
my
people.
second game.
Great stuff. Lots of people messaging in about different games. So obviously that one is one which has already been mentioned on the chat, and not sure if any of the lads are going to cover it. But of course, Mirandina scoring at Wembley in that ill-fated season that we saw relegation, and Ian McFall was managing. But yeah, that's one which I remember quite clearly. A great win. I think probably one of the first wins I can remember at Anfield. But Stu, on to you, mate.
The next game I wanted to talk about, a few people have mentioned it, reading what's been put on, was we've just been promoted, I think, and we beat them 3-0 with an Andy Cole hat-trick. And that game's been tarnished with the Far East betting syndicate scandal with Grobler taking a bung, etc. But Cole's hat-trick was within the first half hour, if I recall correctly. And we properly battered them that day. And I think during it was proper Geordie weather as well. You know, you got the sleet and the snow and the wind and everything else. And this is when Newcastle were like a joy to behold. And this is with that season when they become everyone's second favourite team. And I'm thinking about that betting syndicate. Did they not manage to get the lights turned off at Selhurst Park or something as well? They did. Newcastle there for one of the games. But that game, it was, I think again, it was on a Sunday. But we played unbelievably well, and 3-0. And did Liverpool an injustice. They should have been minus. They never had a kick, and it was one of Keegan's flamboyant, swashbuckling, well, one of many, I suppose, that we recall. But it was an unbelievable game to go to, and at the time, Andy Cole was nailing himself into Geordie folklore. Unfortunately, I use the word tarnish again, but he's tarnished that a bit with his little sing-song at Wembley a few years later, didn't he? But I just love it. Scott Sellers, you mentioned him before, Mitch. He was on fire that day as well. And something I just want to say about Liverpool. When I was growing up, I mentioned like meeting Sammy Lee and going around the trophy room and all that. Liverpool weren't just the best team in the land. They were the best team in Europe, and they were respected. You know, people liked Liverpool, and they represented the country when they were in Europe, and people were proud, you know, like. And they didn't have much malice against them. If you compare that to like Fergie's Man United, you know, there was a lot of the way they create the siege mentality. And Mitch just touched on it before. I mean, when I was in Dubai, me and Mitch drank in the Liverpool supporters bar for years. We have a bit of banter with them, and I always have banter with them. But if you look at it like this year now, how they're complaining about everything and the world's against them, and you've got things like Klopp even complaining about Sheffield United's manager, Chris Wilder. He's just wanting to pick fights, and I don't know if it's to create that siege mentality because he's scared of second season syndrome of winning the league and things like, because they won by such a wide margin, the players' performance levels will drop. And it might be for that benefit, but you can't go around slagging off the TV broadcasters that are paying their salaries and, you know, you're playing us at this time and that time. As Mitch mentioned, we had Plymouth away on a Tuesday night. Did anyone complain then? You know, when the fans have to travel all the way down, and they're creating a bit of animosity towards them now. You know, it's where I think when they won the league, although it was, if you go by Sky and everything else, you would have thought it was the first time they've ever won it, and it was the only thing that should have happened. And hopefully we get the same reception when we do win the league and the same coverage. Sure, we wouldn't, but it would be nice to see that we did get that. But now they're spoiling it a bit with the way they're behaving and their attitude, and it's like the self-righteousness, and that's what's annoyed them. Liverpool in the past carried their heads high with dignity, and when they got beat, they put their hands up, they got beaten, they just made sure it didn't happen often. You know, you talk about the Dalglishes and Russia's team, and even before that, probably before my time, with Emlyn Hughes and all that, you know, when they won European Cups, they did it with, I wouldn't say panache, but they did it with quality. And they were respected for it. But this Liverpool team, maybe through the managers, make themselves hated. So I wanted to talk about the nice time when we're beating 3-0, but even that was messed up with the betting syndicate. But I do have one more win. I'll come to that later on. So there you go.
Okay, good stuff. Good stuff. Steve Hasty, over to you, mate.
I'll bring us forward a bit. I'll bring us forward to 2005. A game that you'll all remember. And you'll remember the goal scorer, you'll remember the free kick that he put in, absolutely beautiful free kick. Not many minutes left to go. He took this free kick. It was supposed to be with his left foot, but he somehow managed to kick it with his right foot, if you remember. And it still ended up in the same place as the ball would have gone if he'd hit it with his left foot. Santiago Nunes. What an absolutely storming game he had. Absolutely storming.
No.
I cannot, every time I see that film, every time I see that shot, I look at the run-up, and you just know that it was Laurent Robert with an absolute rake and left foot. And then in the film, Nunes hits it with his right foot. And if it was going to go anywhere, it was going to go into the corner flag in the far side of the left-hand side. It wasn't going to go where it ended up. No way. Not with the body shape or everything. But that particular game, I think, was the Laurent Robert free kick summed up what Laurent Robert was as a footballer, because no matter how much you were under the cosh, if you got a free kick on the edge of the box, then he would put it away, and he did it against some of the top teams, and he did it consistently. And every goal that he scored for Newcastle seemed to be a rocket. But in that particular game, coming when it did towards the end, and another game where, for some reason when you play Liverpool, it always seems to be raining, especially at St James's Park. And going back to what Stewie said about Liverpool, we got the point as a young lad. I got the point where Liverpool became boring because they were winning everything, and we people in my age group, we started to dislike them because they were winning and consistently winning, and it just became the point where, oh, it's Liverpool again, it's Liverpool again, it's Liverpool again. So the fact that they never won the league for 30 years has been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. Okay, they've won the European Cup and stuff like that, but the fact that it took them so long to rebuild and win the Premier League, it has. I've got a couple of the lads that I drink with, who just, we still harp on about the fact that we couldn't stand Liverpool because they won everything, and that's just football honesty, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it. But they were a great football team, they're some fantastic players. But it just became an absolute bind seeing them win and win and win. And I still feel like that to this day.
I know exactly what you mean, mate. I know exactly what you mean. Mitch, your next game, mate?
Hi. Before I come to that, I've fleshed something out that Stu was mentioning about before, about this mutual respect and the fact that we stood and watched games with the Scousers for years in Dubai and made a lot of friends there. And there was one game in particular when we played them, and they'd give us a footballing lesson. And at the end of it, everybody in that bar was chanting Rafa Benitez's name, them and us. And that was sort of one of those goosebumps, hair standing up moments. It was fantastic, and I couldn't see that this season. I couldn't see that happening this season. If they were still there, they've moved on to another bar now under rather controversial circumstances, but that's another story. The next game I'm going to talk about is August '85, and it's another victory. There seems to be three themes we have with the games against Liverpool. When we lose, we seem to get a thumping. We often have players sent off. And when we win, they tend to be cracking games and somebody stands out or comes of age. And this game in '85 was Gaza's coming of age. We turned in a 1-0 performance with George Reilly getting the goal. And there was a fantastic team element to it. David McCreary and John Anderson kicked anything that moved that day, and I think Dalglish got taken off after 35 minutes to have Anderson's left boot removed from his backside. It really did turn in a hell of a team performance. But everybody after that game, in the national press in particular, not just locally, not just us on the terraces, but in the national press, we're talking about this kid called Gascoigne, who just dominated, and that was the word that people were using, dominated a midfield that had Jan Molby in it, that had Ronnie Whelan in it, John Barnes in it, and the standout man.
Steve McMahon, yeah.
Yes, I think Steve McMahon might have been in that side as well, mate. You know, that was. I mean, come on, they went to a European Cup final that year, and absolutely hammered some huge teams with big name players in it. And that game was Gaza's. That was Gaza at his pomp in a black and white shirt, coming of age, making everybody go, "Oh, who's this kid at Newcastle?" And my only regret for Gaza was he didn't go to Man United. I think Fergie would have looked after him far better than he was looked after in London. But that again is probably another story for another day. But that's my next game. Cracking day. Actually seeing we beat Liverpool, because I've got accustomed to not seeing we beat Liverpool, you know, and the cup game, for example, you know, where we got an absolute thrashing. And to see we turn them over, and it was a proper turning over. It wasn't a fluky 1-0. It was a hard fought for, well earned 1-0.
Yeah, I would agree. That was a great game. As you say, amazing that win against Liverpool 1-0. George Riley with a header. And we had a few over the years like that as well, with unexpected goal scorers. I think Frank Pingle was another one, wasn't he?
Off his backside or something.
I dug out that program 4th of February 1989, and again it was, you know, probably in and around that relegation season time. I think we managed to get a 2-2 draw. I think again, bit like the one that Stu was talking about earlier, the Bruce Grobbelaar game, when I think it was snowing that day. It was horrendous weather, right, but we ended up getting a 2-2 draw. And I think Pingle, if memory serves us correctly, doesn't know much about the header. Just jumped up and clipped the spiky hairdo that he had and went in off the back of his head. But I was in the Gallagher corner that day, I know that much. But yeah, happy memories again, where you think you've got something out of nothing. Okay, well, we've got about 23 minutes left. Any other stories, George? I'll come to you. I know somebody asked you a question, George. I saw you nodding. I think you wanted to answer it, so go on.
Yeah, about Albert Stubbins. How good was he? He was fantastic, and for his career, came to the fore at Newcastle at an unlucky time. There was Albert Stubbins, Roy Bentley, Charlie Wayman, all centre forwards at Newcastle at the time, and a young man called Jackie Milburn breathing down their neck. So it wasn't surprising that some of these lads went elsewhere. So Albert went to Liverpool, Charlie Wayman went to Preston. Although there's another Charlie Wayman story where in a cup tie, he was left out of the team, much to the chagrin of all the other players. And the story goes, or at least went in my family, out of my house, that they actually threw the cup game because of Charlie Wayman being left out. So it wasn't long before Charlie Wayman was off to Preston, and of course Roy Bentley went to Chelsea. The other thing about Albert Stubbins was, I think you may have heard me talk about Jackie Milburn's pace and how in the summer he was a professional sprinter and he won Powder Hall a couple of times. Well, so was Albert Stubbins. Albert Stubbins went to Powder Hall. He didn't win like Jackie did, but his pace was such that he was a good challenge for somebody in terms of pace. So he was an excellent player. As I say, came into the team at a time when there was lots of players like that. It's Bentley, Charlie Wayman, and as Jackie Milburn breathing down their necks. So it wasn't surprising that others went somewhere else. But a very good player. And a very nice man as well.
Good stuff. We often talk about the ground, Anfield. Certainly one of my favourite away games, I've got to be honest. I've got a lot of mates in Liverpool. I tend to hook up with the lads from the farm when I'm down there and go and have a few pints with the Liverpool fans. And it's always a good trip and always a good night out if you decide to stay over as well. But yeah, I've got nothing but happy memories of going to Anfield if you take the football out of the equation. But memories of Anfield for you, George?
Good. I mean, the only couple of times I've been, it's been with Neil and his crew. The football hasn't been happy because both times we got beat. But you can't help but get caught up in the atmosphere, can you?
It's fantastic.
I don't think anybody was singing "You'll Never Walk Alone" louder than the Newcastle lads were, including me. You just get wrapped up in it. It's such an all-consuming atmosphere. You know, it just pulls you in, and so happy memories. I think the second time I went, I wasn't happy. It was less happy because there's one part of the way supporter stand where we used to be a really big girder. I used to stick right in front, and if you got behind that, you couldn't see half the goal. I mean, it was just a waste of time. But apart from that, the rest was absolutely great. And I liked Anfield, and you're right, Stephen. The whole experience staying around afterwards and all the rest of it, never felt threatened going to Anfield. Can I say that? That's
No.
the sort of the other places in the country where I wouldn't want to be left on my own around the ground, but not Anfield. I've never felt threatened at Anfield because there's a happiness about the place that I associate with football of my time. Like I've told you, my father and I used to go to Roker Park and not be worried at all about violence, and I feel the same about Anfield. So Anfield is a happy place for me.
Yep, me too. Steve Wilkinson, what about you? Memories of Anfield?
Yeah, I think just really what you've said there. It's quite strange that there's a lot more hostility from Everton, which is only a couple of 100 yards away. I remember the games, the 2 games against Notts Forest in the Cup in '74. Is when the bus got stoned on the way back, with Everton fans, because it was nothing to do with them at all, but it was very threatening. Whereas every time I've been to Anfield, I've been a couple of times to say Anfield. You felt welcome, and there's no doubt that when you see the cup with all the scarves and the banners, it's a great sight, and we can have that back at Newcastle. We used to have that at Leeds' end when in the early days, everybody with their scarves and the flags and things. And you used to see the massive black and white and everything, and I would like to see that back. And it's not easy to do it in the seats, but I'm sure we could do it without any problem at all. But it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you see the cup in full flow. And unfortunately, we're doing that game I talked about earlier on when they came back from 2-0 to win 4-2. Yeah.
Okay, Stu, your memories of Anfield, mate?
Well, one of my favourite memories of Anfield was Newcastle weren't playing. As I mentioned in one of the previous shows, I worked for London Electricity, and I had a big friend who was a Wimbledon fan, and the last game of the season, I can't remember the year now, maybe it's 98, 99 or something. Wimbledon were playing Liverpool at Anfield, and he managed to get tickets for us. And like yourself, Steve, I've got a few friends in Liverpool. I used to go down there often, like at least once a month for a night out or a weekend out. So we went down Wimbledon. It ended up being Steve McManaman's last game for Liverpool before he went to Real Madrid. And he was a good local lad, and he was really well loved by the fans. And the nice thing, there was no animosity towards him. It was one of when Gascoigne left. When he come back, he got the Mars bar incident and everything else. But there was no animosity. It was like, okay, you've done your bit for us. And he scored on his last game. They won 4-0. I was in the Wimbledon then with probably about 93 others. But there's an electric atmosphere. And as everyone else has mentioned, when you hear them sing that "You Never Walk Alone" when they're up for it, it is a proper football atmosphere. It's one of those you'd be privileged to say I was at. But the last game I wanted to mention, just to put a smile on people's faces, is it was a home game in 2012 when that season was when Jose Enrique had left us because Newcastle would never be a top 6 club, and Pardew and my mate JC were managing Newcastle, and they come up 1st of April of all days, 1st of April. And me and the Heat were at the game, and a few months beforehand, Hearts had played Hibs in the game. And I'm sure the musicians amongst you, especially Steve and Mitch on the bottom row there, this White Stripes 7 Nation Army riff, the bum, 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 bum. So the Hearts fans used to sing against Hibs, "All Highbies Are Gay," to that tune. So this was in the Heat's head. And we used to sing all Mackhams are gay. And then at the Liverpool game, there was just this bit of silence, and he just stood up, top of his voice, "All Scousers are gay," to that tune. And everyone just started laughing. We're sitting just below the Liverpool fans as well. and everyone just started laughing around us, and then a few people joined in. And I believe Andy Carroll had to go in goal or something like that day. Come on and sub, and one of the ex-players ended up in goal.
It was Enrique, mate.
Enrique, yeah. CCS scored twice, and we were in the top 5, and that's when the song when Jose and Enrique were in the top 6. And after doing what we did, went back to the Black Bull, Bobby Solano come in, and he put, I think it was £1.50 in the jukebox, and he just put this song on repeat constantly. the whole bar ended up tapping their feet, with the Seven Nation Army thing. It's just one of those nights you remember, and it was just a fantastic example. And hopefully, as I mentioned, there's many more good times to come in the not too distant future, where at least we get a chance to compete on an even keel, and even a better one. We've got a fan base here that deserves better than what we've had. And we're still doing shows like this, smiling about it, and clinging on to one victory. And yeah, that was great. Remember that, and I think it's just amazing. So I wanted to mention that one. I'm trying my best not to mention the 4-3. I think everyone's done well not to mention it. Yeah, we're all emotionally scarred from it.
I'll just keep flashing the picture up.
Now I'm getting with the tree in the background as well. I'll tell you about the tree. The reason that's on because, as you know, the wife's just come back from the Philippines, and she wanted before she went, she wanted to buy a Christmas tree in September and put it up, because they call it like Burr, September, October, November, December. So as soon as it comes to the Burrs, it's the build up to Christmas, and she wanted the tree up in September because we just moved to Bahrain. So we're not going to get a Christmas tree, she just thinks I'm showing me Scottish heritage being inside. So we went looking for it, we couldn't get one, so I had to wait till she come back, and last Friday was the first opportunity where we could get a Christmas tree. She's decorated it, and strangely enough, she positioned the camera where we are now, so the tree was in the background. So I'll take all the abuse because it's better than what I'll get if I turned it off.
People think it's an NUFC takeover Morse code situation going on behind you there. So some joining the decorations together. That's what people are doing.
Well, it's not far from Saudi where I live either, so it could be subliminal messages as well.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, your memories of Anfield, mate?
I've never been to Anfield to watch a game for Newcastle. I've been thrown out of a few places in Liverpool, mate. I got thrown out of an office complex in Liverpool in the mid-90s for telling them all they were useless. I've queued up in the passport office plenty of times. That's another story. I've had a night out in Liverpool, or a couple of night outs in Liverpool. I've been over to Birkenhead, but I've never actually been into a game when Newcastle have been playing at Liverpool, which is strange. Games that there's a couple of games that I was going to mention. In the game, the last time we played Liverpool under Rafa, I think it was, when Origi scored with 4 minutes to go. There's a lot being talked about recently about performances and about the way that Tottenham, for example, are playing and just sitting back and defending or catching teams on the break. In that particular game, it was 2-2 with 4 or 5 minutes to go when Origi scored and made it 3-2. But we played really, really well. But we only had 31% of the possession. But we actually had more shots on goal than Liverpool that game, even though they had all the possession. We beat them on shots on goal, and we beat them on shots on target as well. And there's so much made about playing defensively and the sort of way that people talk about Rafa and the performances that were put in and how it was boring football at times. And now I'm hearing exactly the same about Mourinho from some quarters, but I'm also hearing people saying Mourinho's an absolute genius because he can sit back and he can play football or allow a team to play in front of him and just show them up and hit them on the break. But that particular game, I thought we played really, really well, and we were destined for at least a point. Just a lapse of concentration, and Origi sneaked it towards the end. I haven't mentioned the 6-0 defeat under Pardew, though. I'll keep that one for another day.
I didn't even download any pictures of that, mate.
Well, you know what?
Mitch,
the reason
memory.
I thought I'll not mention it was because, again, well, there's been various people on Twitter this week, and they've been talking about, maybe Pardew wasn't too bad after all, and people actually saying, bar for this particular run and this particular run, and you go, yeah, but those particular runs, when they're joined together, create a terrible run and a shocking results. And it's that chalk and cheese, isn't it? That really gets to you sometimes, because I think we do have this ability to look at games now through rose-coloured spectacles when we see the performances that we're watching recently, and then performances in the past, and we start to compare managers, and all of a sudden, the further away you get, the better, in some people's eyes, a manager seems to become. Yeah. And that's certainly happening at the moment on Twitter with regards to Pardew. Whether it's because he's now taken up a job again after being useless at the previous 3 jobs since he left Newcastle, I don't know. But now he's in Europe, and he's with a big club, isn't he? As an advisor, I think he's gone to Belgrade or somewhere like that. But it's just absolutely hilarious, man.
Nicholas, yes, we did go to the game together, mate. Your memory's not that bad. I was definitely on that felon bus. Blaster was definitely on, God bless him. Jimmy Townsend, Marty Moran, we're all on that bus. You all had tickets for the away end. I was in the home end. I was in the centenary stand. I actually took Mark Hannon, who still works at the club, in the media department, because I managed to get 2 tickets from me pals down there, and me and Mark Hannon sat in the centenary stand. Mark obviously was working with the Basketball Association at the time. Mark obviously kept his seat when Newcastle scored. Unfortunately, I didn't. And I was getting all the death threats from all the Scousers. And eventful evening when Collymore scored that goal in the dying seconds. Steve Wraith was half the way across Stanley Park because he was going to get chased by all the locals. But they were too busy celebrating that goal going in, and it gave me a good chance to get away. But I did get back to the bus, Nicholas, as you know, and we drowned our sorrows on the way back to the felon. So, happy memories. If only that goal hadn't gone in by Collymore. Mitch, just your memories of Anfield, mate, before we move on to the celebrity fans and then players that played for both teams.
This is where I'm the odd man out. I cannot stand You'll Never Walk Alone. Cannot stand it. And Fields of Athenry, they can shove that where the sun doesn't shine as well.
Yeah, that one.
I cannot have none of that. Sorry, that's just me being a. I don't know whether it's because Christmas is coming up and I'm getting the Grinch head on or what, but it's never done the same for me at all. It's somewhere I keep talking about, like, going to grounds with soul, and that's the one thing again it has got, even though it irritates the life out of us. It's certainly got it. And as Steve rightly said, it's a game you can walk around and not feel uncomfortable as an away fan. That's pretty much. I'll keep it brief because obviously time's ticking. But yeah, I'm the odd man out on with Never Walk Alone. Can't stand it.
Yeah, no problem. We didn't touch on the 74 Cup final, but if you want to listen to Malcolm MacDonald's memories and John Gibson's memories of that ill-fated Cup final day, despite a wonderful run, you can listen to it on the playbacks on one of our special shows, and it's a cracking show. John Gibson giving us all the memories of each game, and subsequently Super Mac giving us his memories from a playing perspective. Absolutely fantastic. Got to give this a mention, lads, as well. This is what made me go on a diet, but here's a good one for the pub quiz. A game which you might remember is when I got the legends back together at Kingston Park. Me and a couple of other people arranged a big day down at Kingston Park. Newcastle versus Liverpool. We've got most of the entertainers back. We've got Kevin Keegan and Terry Mack back to manage the team. Great day. Liverpool spoilt the party though, winning 4-1. But just in the back row there in the blue top, looking slightly overweight, is me next to Pavel Cernacek. And that was there. Here's your question for the pub quiz. Who was Kevin Keegan's last substitution as Newcastle manager? Yep, it was me. I came on for Kevin Keegan in that game. I came on for Pavel Cernacek. and I was on the pitch for 6 minutes. There you can just see us in the distance there behind David Ginola and Steve Harmison. And in that 6 minutes, I managed to give away a penalty and concede a penalty. So we lost 4-1, but we raised, I think it was something in the region of £34,000 for charity that day. It was an absolutely fantastic day. And I tell you what, kind of take away the memories of being in the dressing room and listening to Alan Shearer crack on the bench. But fantastic memories, great times, and all in the name of charity. But on to the final part of the show now, and we're going to look at the players who played for both teams. So I usually try and trick the lads, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it today. Let's start with this one. Enrique, of course, mentioned him slightly earlier.
Shelby.
Yeah, John Joe Shelby.
Bellamy.
Craig Bellamy.
Andy Carroll.
Big Andy Carroll.
Milner.
Yeah.
John Bonds.
John Bonds, quite a great selection of players, really, when you look at it.
Incredible.
Hooper.
Mike Hooper, who ended up on the door at the Red Lion in Chester Street.
Terry Mack.
Terry McDermott.
Alan Kennedy.
Alan Kennedy, of course.
Gini Wijnaldum.
Wijnaldum, yep.
Haman.
Didi Haman.
Didi Haman. I've kept the best till have I kept the best till last, or have I got one more? Yeah, I've kept the best till last.
Barry Venison.
Miami Vice.
What a suit that is, Barry, lad. I know Barry sometimes tunes in and watches the show, and we were lucky enough to get an interview with him earlier this year as well. If you check out the 1990s players list interviews, he's in there, Barry. It was a brilliant interview. I loved doing that. It was great to speak to him. Not many people get the opportunity to do it, so great to speak to him. Okay, Newcastle, Liverpool players over. We're now going into the celebrity fans, and always ones that I can try and trick the lads up on. So let's go with a couple of easy ones first.
Ricky Tomlinson.
Ricky Tomlinson, yeah.
Is that Jason Isaacs?
Jason Isaacs, the actor, yeah. Well done.
Is that Liam Neeson?
That's correct, Liam Neeson.
Yeah, it is.
Christa Berg. Dr. Dre. Bloody hell.
Wow, well done, Dr. Dre. That was a hard one. I've got to be honest.
Getting down with the kids.
John Bishop.
John Bishop,
yes.
Well done, Steve Wilkinson, yeah. I'm looking for the actor's name, not the character's name.
Yeah.
Adam
Woodyard.
Yeah.
Adam Woodyard.
Kenny Dalglish.
Daniel Craig.
Definitely
Point.
Kenny Dalglish.
A point for each one.
That's
Daniel Craig and Mike Myers.
Mike
Myers, yeah. Well done, lads.
It's a basketball player.
Whoever it is.
Is it Michael Jordan?
It's not Michael. It's not Michael Jordan. No.
Oh, what's his name? I know him.
I'll let you have a bit more
LeBron
time on
James.
this one. Edit.
LeBron
Well
James.
done. Well done, that man.
Yeah.
Well done, lads. Well done.
Oh, Oliver. John Oliver.
Yeah.
Well done. That's got two more left, lads.
Is that Craig Charles?
Oh, well done, Steve.
What a spot.
This is
Spot.
Steve. That's a bella. We've got one left, lads. This is for a full house.
Wow.
You may have got me there.
Yeah.
Clues on it.
Got a bit of time, lads. Take your time. Take your time, because this is for a full house, lads. This is for a full house.
Nah, you got me beat on that one.
Ricky Iglesias? No.
No. It's obvious. It's obviously a musician.
Yeah.
Never.
That's
not
your
your mate
clue.
from the farm, is it?
It's not Craig Charles.
No.
It's a tough one, like, isn't it?
It's not Rachel either.
The best thing about it is, it is the last one. Come on, Steve. You must be able to get this.
Nah.
No clues needed.
Computers. The actual computer's gone my end as well, so I'm struggling now because I'm trying to find the actual name of the person. Oh, hold on, I've got it. Yeah, I've got it. Okay. If I give you the name of the band, seeing as though I'm in a generous mood, if I give you the name of the band, would you get the singer? No, I'm going to give you the name of the band. Star Sailor.
Oh.
Tom someone. Tom.
Nah.
No,
Nah,
James Walsh from Star Sailor. That would have been a clean sweep. I've done it again, lads. Managed to get one. And hey, I tell you what, you did absolutely brilliantly there. Did anyone get it in the chat? I'm just double checking. No, nobody. Yeah, Tom Dixon said you got them there. A lot of people saying James Blunt, Jarrett Elvis.
Elvis.
Okay, as always, we'll finish off with the teams, lads. Let's go with Steve Wilkinson first.
Right, okay. Well, I can only find one goalkeeper, Mike Hooper. Fullback, just to be different, I'm going to go with Manquillo, right back. Barry Venison. Have you got that picture handy, Stevie, that show up? That picture that I sent you? Guy on here is Dave Davidson, who was the second on the right, second from the left at the back. I haven't got a clue who he is, other than he played for Liverpool 1928, 1930, and us from 30-37, including in this final 1931-32, when that was a controversial game when Jack Allen scored on a goal that would have been disallowed if they had VAR and goal line technology in those days, because it was well over the line when you see the photos. So Dave Wilson centre half, Jose Enrique left back. I'm playing 4-3-3 formation. Terry Mack, Gini Wijnaldum, James Milner in the midfield, and up front, Beasley, Keegan, and Rush.
Okay, great stuff.
Most of them doing their good stuff for Liverpool, not us.
Good stuff. Cheers, Steve. George, you next.
Hooper's goalkeeper. I couldn't find anybody else for the goalkeeper. And I did a 3-4-3. Kennedy, Baraquino, Venison, Guthrie, Haman, Windjam, and then across the front it was Owen, come on, Dalglish, and Keegan.
Good stuff. Very attacking team. Stu.
Manager, I would have went with Kev, with Keegan.
Okay. Stu.
Well, I picked them on their performances in their pomp, whether it be for us or for Liverpool. And it was probably one of the easiest ones we've had, because there's been that many good players played for both. But then it became more difficult because it was who more to leave out rather than who to put in.
Yeah.
So I ended up going for a 3-2-3-2 formation with 5 subs. I got Hooper in goal because, again, he's the only one I could find. But the back three of James Milner, Barry Venison, and Alan Kennedy. The 2 holding midfielders were Gini Wijnaldum and Terry Mack. In front of them was Craig Bellamy, Peter Beardsley, John Barnes. And up front, Keegan and Ian Rush. The subs were Manquillo, Enrique, Shelby, Haman, Carroll. And against everything I wanted to actually do, I suppose Michael Owen has to get a mention. But I wouldn't put him in the team, so I had to make him last sub. And Dalglish as manager because of everything he's achieved in the game.
Fair enough. Over to you, Steve Hasty.
I went 3 at the back. I went Hooper in goal, and I went. What have I got? I've got Milner, Venison, and Alan Kennedy as a back 3. I've got Wijnaldum, Terry Mack, Beardsley, and Barnes as a 4. And then I've got Keegan, Rush, and Michael Owen up front. And I put Dalglish as manager as well.
Okay, good stuff. He did win something, so I'm not surprised at that at all. Mitch?
Hooper in goal because it seems to be the only one. And then I went with a back 4 of Milner, Venison. I slid Enrique across the centre back and Alan Kennedy at left back. And then a midfield 3 of Haman, Terry Mack and John Barnes. And then Stubbins, Beardsley and Keegan up front, managed by Rafa.
Great stuff. I love that bit. It's always good to hear how people would set up and different things. But yeah, great show, lads. I knew we'd run into extra time with this one. I'd like to do Leeds next week, if you're up for it. Dirty Leeds.
Dirty Leeds.
Dirty Leeds, yeah.
Obviously, we've had a lot of time where we haven't played them, but got some good memories, some early memories.
They're the other team that shares the bar that we used to drink in with the Scousers, so we'll have some Leeds stories as well.
Fantastic. I look for...
Is the match 5:30 kick-off, Steve, next week?
It might be... Yeah, we'll be in touch about the timings of it. Things will start to change over the next couple of weeks anyway. I'm doing a lot of pre-recorded shows over the next week with people. We've already recorded a great show with Supermac and John Gibson looking back at Supermac's England career, which will be going out on Christmas Day. But we've got quite a few different shows lined up with people which will give me and everybody else involved with NUFC matters a few days off over the festive season. I do have to issue an apology to me dad, who unfortunately for the last 3 years has been centre stage with Amanda Staveley and Mayor Dad on Sky at every opportunity. Unfortunately for me dad, when I told him to sit in front of Amanda, it wasn't the best idea, and unfortunately me dad's constantly on Sky, and at the time he did work in Sunderland at the university. He's now retired, thankfully, but yeah, his identity as a Newcastle fan working in Sunderland was given up by that footage on Sky, so I do owe me dad an apology. Sorry, Dad, but I'm so glad it wasn't me sitting there, mate. We also are still running our campaign, Think Before You Tweet. I have good news. The documentary is completed. The first draft is completed, and the running time of the documentary is 2 hours. That will be going out on the 15th. It might go out slightly earlier, but 15th, it's well on schedule. So Think Before You Tweet. Great documentary. Thank you to everybody who has contributed to it. I'm really pleased with it. I've just watched the first draft today, and I don't think I want to change anything. Just going to wait and hear from everybody else. But big thanks to George, big thanks to Steve Wilkinson, to Stu Penman, Steve Hasty and Neil Mitchell for joining me tonight. Look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we're a little bit late on the old poster, so that'll be going out tomorrow night for the Three Amigos guys. So we'll play out with the video, but until then, take care lads, see you next week.
Think before you tweet.
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 Please just think before you tweet.
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 Think before you tweet.